Captain Dana Murphy stared at the blinking notification on her command console and wondered, not for the first time, if the universe had a peculiar sense of humor. The alert read unknown vessel approaching classification big and pointy. She made a mental note to have a word with whoever programmed the Florence Nightingale II's identification systems with such technical precision. Computer, she called out, adjusting her regulation-perfect uniform out of habit. Please tell me that's not another Zentaran merchant trying to sell us space Viagra. I still haven't recovered from last week's sales pitch. The ship's AI, affectionately nicknamed Flo by the crew, responded in its characteristically prim voice. Negative, Captain. The approaching vessel's design does not match any known Zentaran configurations. However, it does appear to be compensating for something. Murphy snorted. Teaching the AI sarcasm had been her first officer's pet project, and some days she wasn't sure whether to promote or demote him for it. Captain to Medical Bay, she announced over the intercom. Dr. Marcus, how's our patient load today? The response came back with the sound of something shattering in the background. Oh, splendid. Just splendid. Lieutenant Rodriguez decided to prove that humans can, in fact, juggle activated plasma injectors. Spoiler alert, we cannot. But on the bright side, his eyebrows should grow back in a few weeks. Murphy pinched the bridge of her nose. The Florence Nightingale I might be the most advanced medical transport vessel in Earth's fleet, but some days it felt more like running a daycare for beings with too many degrees and not enough common sense. Right. Well, heads up, we've got company coming. Unknown vessel, looks like first contact scenario. Standard protocols apply. Wonderful, Dr. Marcus chirped. I'll prepare the diplomatic welcome package, and maybe hide the more expensive equipment from Rodriguez. The bridge crew, all 5 of them, maintained their positions with varying degrees of professionalism. Lieutenant Commander James Chen, her first officer and resident AI corruption specialist, was actually doing his job for once, analyzing the approaching vessel's energy signatures. Ensign Patel at Communications was trying to look busy while obviously playing Galactic solitaire. And Navigator Wong was. Was he knitting? Wong, please tell me that's some kind of new neural interface control system. No ma'am, he replied cheerfully, not looking up from his needles. It's a sweater. For my cat. She gets cold in space. Before Murphy could question the logic of a cat needing a sweater on a climate-controlled starship, Patel's console lit up like a Christmas tree. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel, audio and visual. Well then, Murphy straightened in her chair, smoothing down her uniform again. Let's make first contact, put them on screen, Ensign, and Wong hide the knitting. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing what appeared to be the bridge of the alien vessel. The beings on screen were tall, angular creatures with iridescent scales and what looked suspiciously like LED mood lighting built into their foreheads. Their bridge was all sharp angles and dramatic shadows, as if designed by someone who thought evil space empire was a proper architectural style. Murphy put on her best diplomatic smile, the one she usually reserved for dealing with Earth bureaucrats and particularly difficult patients. This is Captain Dana Murphy of the Earth medical transport vessel Florence Nightingale II. We come in peace and offer medical assistance to all species in accordance with the Soul Accords. The alien in the center of the screen, wearing what appeared to be enough metals to sink a small ship, tilted its head at an angle that made Murphy's neck hurt just looking at it. When it spoke, its translator rendered its voice in a tone that somehow managed to convey both superiority and confusion at the same time. We are the Krixian Empire, and you have entered our space. Explain your presence and the purpose of your clearly militant vessel. Murphy blinked. She looked around at her pristine white ship with its massive red crosses emblazoned on every surface, then back at the screen. I'm sorry, our what now? And that's when Tuesday started getting interesting. Let me get this straight, Murphy said slowly, as if explaining quantum physics to a particularly dense rock. You think our hospital ship, literally named after the founder of modern nursing, is a military vessel? The Krixian commander's LED forehead lights shifted to what Murphy could only assume was their equivalent of a condescending purple. Your vessel is clearly equipped with multiple particle beam emitters. Those are medical scanners. Your hull is reinforced with military-grade plating. That's bacterial decontamination shielding. And those pods along your port and starboard sides are obviously missile launchers. Murphy fought the urge to bang her head against her console. Those are emergency escape pods for patients. They're literally labeled emergency escape pods in 15 different languages. including interpretive dance. Lieutenant Commander Chen leaned over and whispered, "To be fair, Captain, the interpretive dance version does look a bit aggressive. All those hip thrusts." Not helping Chen. The Krixian commander's antenna twitched in what their cultural database would later identify as extreme skepticism. "And what about the highly suspicious substance your ship is generating in large quantities?" "You mean the coffee?" Murphy asked incredulously. "It's a beverage. Helps keep our medical staff alert during long shifts." "Aha!" The Krixians' triumphant cry made several bridge crew members jump. "You admit to using chemical stimulants to enhance your crew's combat capabilities." At this point, Dr. Marcus's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, sorry to interrupt what sounds like a fascinating discussion about our coffee addiction, but Lieutenant Rodriguez is now trying to convince the engineering staff that he can moonwalk in zero gravity while juggling deactivated plasma injectors." The key word being trying. Murphy closed her eyes and counted to 10. In Klingon, it helped. "Commander," she addressed the alien, "I invite you to send a diplomatic delegation to tour our vessel. You'll see we're exactly what we claim to be, a medical ship." The Krixian commander conferred with their officers in what they probably thought was a private huddle, but their microphone was still very much on. "The humans are crafty. They've disguised their warship as a medical vessel. Very sneaky. Almost admirable." "Sir, what if it's actually a medical vessel?" "Don't be ridiculous, Sub-Commander. Next you'll suggest their coffee isn't liquid ammunition." Murphy cleared her throat loudly. "We can still hear you." The Krixian commander straightened up so fast their metals jangled. "We accept your invitation, Captain. Prepare to receive our inspection team." As the transmission ended, Chen turned to Murphy. "Should I tell Rodriguez to stop trying to moonwalk, or should we let the Krixians witness the full spectrum of human idiocy?" "Let him continue," Murphy decided. "Maybe if they see how stupid we can be, they'll believe we're not clever enough to disguise a warship." The Krixian delegation arrived 30 minutes later in what could only be described as combat-ready environmental suits, complete with what appeared to be enough scanning equipment to analyze a small planet. Their leader, introducing himself as Inspector Krix, Murphy immediately dubbed him Crystal in her head, moved through the ship like someone expecting the walls to sprout lasers at any moment. "And this," Dr. Marcus said with the patience of a saint, leading them through the medical bay, "is our intensive care unit, where Lieutenant Rodriguez is currently demonstrating why artificial gravity and dance moves don't mix." The Krixians watched in horror as Rodriguez, sporting freshly regrown eyebrows, attempted to demonstrate the worm to a group of cheering nurses. "Surely," Inspector Crystal whispered to his colleagues, "this must be some form of combat training." "Negative, sir," one of his subordinates replied, consulting a scanner. "According to my readings, this is just stupidity. It's impossible. No species could achieve space travel while being this. If you think this is bad," Dr. Marcus commented cheerfully, "you should see our holiday parties. Last Christmas, someone spiked the eggnog with Andorian brandy. 3 nurses and a xenobiologist tried to recreate the entire Nutcracker ballet using only medical supplies and a confused therapy dog." The Krixian delegation huddled together, their lead foreheads cycling through colors faster than a disco ball. Murphy could practically see their worldview crumbling in real time. But Crystal sputtered. "What about these?" He pointed accusingly at a row of hypospray injectors. "Those are for administering medicine," Dr. Marcus explained. "Would you like a demonstration? Lieutenant Rodriguez could probably use a mild sedative right about now." "No," the entire Krixian delegation shouted in unison, backing away. "No demonstrations." Murphy was about to suggest they move on to the cafeteria where the coffee machine could prove it wasn't manufacturing liquid ammunition when Flo's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, 3 Krixian warships just dropped out of FTL. They're charging weapons." Crystal's forehead LEDs turned a shade that could only be described as, "Oh crap, there must be some mistake. I haven't even signaled my findings to the fleet." "Yeah," Murphy raised an eyebrow. "Well, someone didn't get the memo about peaceful diplomatic missions. Chen, get our guests to the secure observation lounge. Dr. Marcus, begin emergency patient evacuation procedures. And somebody please get Rodriguez off the ceiling." As Murphy rushed toward the bridge, she heard Crystal frantically trying to contact his ships. She had a feeling this Tuesday was about to get a lot more interesting, and not in the good way. "Flo," she called out, "remind me to update my resume after this. I think maintain diplomatic relations while juggling staff idiocy and trigger happy aliens will look good on my next job application. Noted, Captain the AI replied. Should I also mention the coffee? Let's save that for the interview. The first shot from the Krixian warships didn't so much graze the Florence Nightingale II as gently caress it with plasma, which, Murphy reflected, was still several degrees too intimate for her taste. Damage report, she called out, sprinting onto the bridge. Minimal damage to outer hull, Chen reported, his usual grin replaced with something considerably more professional. Though they did scorch our newest paint job, maintenance is going to be furious. Multiple incoming transmissions, Patel announced. The Krixian ships are demanding our immediate surrender. They're calling us. Let me make sure I'm translating this correctly. Sneaky medical pretenders with suspiciously efficient coffee machines. Inspector Crystal burst onto the bridge, his forehead LEDs flashing what appeared to be Morse code for help in 7 different colors. Captain, there's been a terrible mistake. I've been trying to contact our fleet commander, but they're not responding. Probably too busy shooting at us, Murphy muttered. Flow, begin emergency broadcast on all frequencies. Medical vessel under attack. Include our registry, credentials, and why not our last safety inspection report. Let's see them argue with our perfect score and bacterial containment procedures. The ship shuddered as another shot struck their port side. Captain Dr. Marcus's voice crackled over the intercom, somehow managing to sound both exhausted and amused. I hate to add to our problems, but Lieutenant Rodriguez is insisting he can help. He claims his new juggling skills could be tactically significant. Tell him if he touches anything more dangerous than a cotton swab, I'll personally ensure his next medical examination is conducted by our most thorough Vulcan specialist. The threat would have been more effective if another blast hadn't punctuated her words, this one actually managing to breach their outer hull. Warning klaxons began blaring throughout the ship. Hull breach on deck 4, Flow reported primly. Emergency force fields are holding, but I feel compelled to point out that this level of excitement is not conducive to patient recovery. Murphy turned to Crystal, who was attempting to make himself as small as possible in a corner of the bridge. Your ship's just breached the hull of a clearly marked hospital ship. Do you have any idea what this means? That we should all take a moment to discuss this rationally over some non-weaponized coffee. Not quite. Murphy's smile was eerily calm. Flow, send out the emergency distress beacon. Priority 1. Include full sensor logs of the attack. Already done, Captain the AI replied. Earth Defense Command acknowledges receipt. There. Oh my. Oh my what? Their response just broke several encryption protocols through sheer volume of profanity. Translating the relevant portions: Earth Defense Fleet mobilizing. All available ships redirecting to our location. And, Captain, they're deploying the 1st Medical Defense Squadron. Crystal's LEDs went completely dark. The what? Remember how humans get when someone threatens their doctors? Murphy asked conversationally. No? Well, you're about to find out. The ship rocked with another impact, and Murphy grabbed her command chair to stay upright. All right, people, this is not a drill. Begin emergency evacuation procedures. Dr. Marcus, start moving patients to the escape pods. Crystal, you and your delegation are staying right here where I can keep an eye on you. Wong, are you still knitting? Almost finished the cat sweater, Captain, he replied calmly, needles clicking away. It helps me think. Well, think faster. Plot us an escape vector that doesn't end with us being turned into space debris. Already done. Though I should mention, 3 more Krixian warships just dropped out of FTL. Murphy was about to respond when her console lit up with a priority message from Earth Defense Command. She read it quickly, then allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Crystal, she said sweetly. Remember how I mentioned humans get protective of their medical personnel? The inspector nodded nervously. Well, the good news is, you're about to witness that firsthand. The bad news is, you're about to witness that firsthand. She turned to her crew. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of indeterminate gender, Earth Defense Command has authorized protocol Don't Mess with the Medics Flow. Send to all escape pods initiation of emergency evacuation in 5 minutes. What's protocol Don't Mess with the Medics? Crystal asked, his voice small. Oh, you know how most species have their military protect their medical ships. Murphy's smile grew wider. We humans decided to do it the other way around. Our medical ships protect our military, by making sure anyone who attacks them really regrets it. As if to punctuate her words, space itself seemed to tear open as the first wave of Earth's response arrived. The look on Crystal's face as he watched ship after ship pour through the ruptures in space-time was almost worth having their paint job ruined. Almost. Captain Flo announced. Admiral Old Thunder Thompson sends his regards and asks if you'd like to watch what happens next from a safe distance. Yes, please. Murphy turned to Crystal. I don't suppose now would be a good time to mention that coffee isn't actually ammunition. The inspector's only response was to slide slowly down the wall, his forehead leaded as playing what appeared to be a tiny light show of regret. I'll take that as a no. Admiral Jack Old Thunder Thompson had been having a perfectly nice day until someone decided to shoot at a hospital ship. He stood on the bridge of the EDF Hippocrates, flagship of the 1st Medical Defense Squadron, and watched the tactical display with the serene expression of someone who had just found a perfectly legitimate reason to ruin someone else's day. Status report, he rumbled, his voice living up to his nickname. 6 Krixian warships currently engaged with the Florence Nightingale II, his tactical officer reported. The hospital ship's shields are holding, but they've sustained hull damage. Captain Murphy is initiating emergency evacuation protocols. And our response force. 15 ships already on site. Another 30 en route. The 2nd Fleet is redirecting from Saturn, and the Mars Defense Force is, sir, they're requesting permission to, and I quote, show these coffee-insulting heathens what happens when you mess with our medics. Thompson smiled. It wasn't a particularly nice smile. Permission granted. Deploy the fleet in standard you done messed up formation, and get me a channel to the Krixian ships. Meanwhile, aboard the Florence Nightingale II, Captain Murphy was watching the arrival of Earth's forces with a satisfaction that bordered on unprofessional. The massive medical defense ships, painted in the same pristine white as her vessel but bristling with enough weaponry to make a battleship jealous, were taking up attack positions around her wounded ship. Captain Flo announced, Admiral Thompson is broadcasting to all ships, including the Krixians. Put it on screen, Murphy ordered. This should be educational. Admiral Thompson's weathered face appeared on every monitor in range, his expression reminiscent of a disappointed parent about to ground someone for life. This is Admiral Thompson of the Earth Defense Force to all Krixian vessels. You have committed an act of war by attacking a clearly marked medical vessel. Under normal circumstances, this would result in a proportional military response. He paused, letting that sink in. However, you didn't just attack any medical ship. You attacked one of our medical ships, while it was actively treating patients, including, I might add, 3 of your own citizens who were receiving emergency care for a particularly nasty case of space flu. On Murphy's bridge, Crystal's LEDs cycled through what appeared to be the entire visible spectrum before settling on a mortified mauve. We had citizens on board. Oh yes, Murphy replied cheerfully. They're in quarantine ward 3. Dr. Marcus has been treating them for the past week. They're quite nice, actually. One of them taught Rodriguez how to juggle. In retrospect, that might have been a mistake. Admiral Thompson continued his broadcast. You have exactly 5 minutes to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. After that, we will demonstrate exactly why the Geneva Convention has an entire subsection titled Seriously, Don't Attack Medical Personnel, We Mean It. The Krixian Fleet Commander's response was immediate, and probably not what their diplomatic corps would have recommended. They opened fire on the Earth ships. Well, Thompson sighed, I suppose we're doing this the hard way. All ships, execute protocol time for your medicine. What happened next would later be described in Krixian military academies as the reason we now have a mandatory course on identifying medical vessels. The Earth ships moved with a precision that suggested they had, perhaps, practiced this exact scenario multiple times. With enthusiasm. Are those ships using modified medical tractor beams to manipulate plasma fields? Crystal asked, watching in horrified fascination as one of the Earth vessels literally reached out and turned a Krixian weapon array inside out. Oh yes, Murphy replied. Turns out technology designed to perform microsurgery works remarkably well for precision strikes. Who knew? And those surgical lasers. Scaled up a bit, but essentially. Very precise. Very clean. Minimal collateral damage. Murphy paused. Well, minimal unintended collateral damage. The battle, if it could be called that, was less of a fight and more of a demonstration. The Earth ships moved through the Krixian formation like white blood cells attacking an infection, systematically disabling weapons, propulsion systems, and eventually life support. Captain Flo announced. Admiral Thompson is hailing the Krixian flagship again. On screen, Thompson looked even more disappointed than before. Now that I have your attention, perhaps we should discuss the proper protocols for interacting with medical vessels. I've taken the liberty of preparing a presentation. Attendance is mandatory. Murphy turned to Crystal, who was watching his fleet being systematically dismantled with the expression of someone realizing they had made a series of poor life choices. So about that coffee. I believe Crystal said faintly, I would very much like a cup. Assuming it's actually not ammunition. Wonderful. Though I should warn you, our coffee machine is currently being operated by Lieutenant Rodriguez. He's convinced he's discovered a new brewing technique that involves interpretive dance. Crystal's LEDs flickered briefly before settling on a resigned beige. At this point, Captain, that's not even the strangest thing I've seen today. As if to prove his point, one of the Earth's ships chose that moment to use what appeared to be a giant medical probe to perform what could only be described as long-distance acupuncture on a Krixian warship's engine core. You know, Murphy mused, watching the display, I think this might actually look good on my resume. The thing about humans, as the Krixian Empire was rapidly discovering, was their fascinating interpretation of the phrase proportional response to most species. This meant responding to an attack with similar force. To humans, apparently it meant mobilizing enough medical defense ships to perform an impromptu galaxy-wide health and safety inspection. Admiral Thompson stood in the conference room of the EDF Hippocrates, addressing representatives from 17 different species who had shown up to watch the show. And this, he said, pointing to a holographic display, is why you don't fire on medical vessels. Any medical vessels, but especially human medical vessels. Any questions? A tentacled being in the back raised 3 appendages. Is it true you turned their flagship's bridge into a temporary urgent care clinic? They complained of headaches, Thompson replied blandly. We felt obligated to help. Meanwhile, aboard the Florence Nightingale II, Captain Murphy was dealing with her own form of diplomacy. Inspector Crystal sat in her office, nursing his 3rd cup of coffee, after careful scientific analysis had confirmed it was, indeed, just coffee, watching the feeds from across Krixian space as Earth's medical fleet conducted what they were calling routine inspections. Your ships are installing medical facilities on our stations, he said, his lead forehead displaying what appeared to be a screensaver of gentle waves. Yes. And implementing emergency response protocols. And organizing mandatory first aid training for our entire military. Someone has to teach proper bandaging techniques. Your current method looks like it was designed by a drunken octopus. Crystal took another sip of coffee. And the therapy dogs. Oh, those are Lieutenant Rodriguez's idea. Turns out he's surprisingly good at animal therapy programs when he's not trying to juggle medical equipment. On the main screen, they watched as another Earth medical defense vessel approached a Krixian military installation. The installation's commanders, having apparently learned from recent events, immediately began broadcasting their vaccination records. Your ships are spreading across our territory like a well-organized emergency response network, Murphy suggested helpfully. Yes, no, I mean, Crystal's LEDs flickered in confusion. This isn't how conquering armies usually behave. Who said anything about conquering? We're providing medical assistance. Very thorough, completely unrequested medical assistance. With gunships, for protection. Of the medical personnel, obviously. The door chimed, and Dr. Marcus entered, looking entirely too pleased with himself. Captain, you'll be happy to know that our impromptu medical conference with the Krixian military leadership was a complete success, especially after we demonstrated proper emergency response techniques. Did you know they'd never considered using their ceremonial armor as impromptu splints? How many attended? Murphy asked. Oh, all of them. Attendance was surprisingly high after we parked the 3rd Medical Defense Squadron outside their headquarters, with their surgical lasers, for demonstrations of proper surgical techniques, obviously. Crystal's LEDs dimmed slightly. Those aren't really for demonstrations, are they? Of course they are, Murphy said brightly. We just find that participation rates are higher when the demonstrations are properly incentivized. The office door chimed again, and Lieutenant Rodriguez bounded in, somehow managing to juggle 3 stress balls while wearing a therapy dog vest. Captain. Great news. The Krixians love the therapy animals. We've already set up programs in 6 major military installations. though there was a small incident when one of their admirals tried to arrest a golden retriever for being suspiciously friendly. Murphy raised an eyebrow. And how did that go? The Admiral is now attending mandatory pet therapy sessions. The retriever is overseeing his rehabilitation. On the main screen, another Earth medical ship was calmly explaining to a Krixian defense platform why their medical bay layout violated at least 15 different safety protocols. The platform's commanders were taking notes. "You have to admit," Murphy said to Crystal, "this is much better than actual warfare. No one dies, everyone gets better healthcare, and we get to practice our emergency response protocols. It's win-win." "This is the most aggressive provision of medical care I've ever witnessed," Crystal muttered. "Oh, this is nothing. Wait until the dental hygiene squad arrives." Crystal's LEDs went completely dark. "The what?" "Let's just say there's a reason humans are the only species in known space with a military designation for orthodontists," Murphy smiled serenely. "Would you like another coffee? I believe Rodriguez has perfected his interpretive dance brewing technique. He's calling it the caffeinated waltz." As if to punctuate her words, the ship's speakers began playing classical music, and somewhere in the distance, they could hear the distinct sound of someone attempting to pirouette while operating a coffee machine. Crystal looked at his empty cup, then at the screen showing Earth's medical fleet spreading across his empire's space like a very well-armed healthcare program, and finally at Rodriguez, who had somehow acquired more stress balls and was now attempting to juggle them in time with the music. "Yes," he said faintly. "I believe I would like another cup. And perhaps some aspirin." Murphy's smile widened. "Welcome to human medicine, Inspector. We take healing very, very seriously." 3 months after what historians would later call the Great Medical Misunderstanding, and what human medical personnel would call Tuesday, Captain Dana Murphy sat in her ready room aboard the Florence Nightingale II, reading the latest updates from across the galaxy. Captain Flo announced, "The Galactic Council's Medical Standardization Committee is ready to begin their session. They're requesting your expert testimony." "Of course they are," Murphy sighed, straightening her uniform. "Put them on screen." The display flickered to life, showing representatives from 24 spacefaring civilizations. Front and center sat Inspector Crystal, now officially the Krixian Empire's first Minister of Interspecies Medical Cooperation, his forehead ladies glowing a professional shade of azure. "Captain Murphy," he began, "thank you for joining us. We're finalizing the new Universal Medical Vehicle Recognition Protocols, and given your unique experience, we'd value your input." "Happy to help. I see you're drinking coffee." Crystal's LEDs flickered briefly to what Murphy now recognized as embarrassment purple. "Yes, well, Lieutenant Rodriguez's interpretive dance blend has become quite popular among our diplomatic corps. Though we had to ban the actual dancing after the incident with the Chancellor and the anti-grav stabilizers." "Speaking of Rodriguez," Murphy said, "how's the exchange program going? Your lieutenant has successfully taught medical juggling to 3 different species, established therapy dog programs in 17 major facilities, and somehow convinced our entire Space Navy to participate in weekly healing movement sessions." Crystal paused. "We're still not sure if this is improving our healthcare or slowly driving everyone insane, but morale is up 300%. A tentacle being raised an appendage. "Captain Murphy, some of us are concerned about the Earth Medical Defense Fleet's continued presence in various territorial spaces." "Oh, you mean the routine health and safety inspections? Is that what we're calling it now?" the being asked dryly. "Would you prefer aggressive preventative care?" "What we'd prefer," another representative chimed in, "is an explanation for why Earth maintains warships disguised as medical vessels." Murphy smiled the smile of someone who had explained this multiple times and was happy to do so again, possibly with practical demonstrations. "You still don't get it, do you? We don't disguise warships as medical vessels, we turn medical vessels into warships. There's a difference." "But why?" "Because someone has to make sure the doctors can do their jobs. And humans take healthcare very, very seriously." She paused. "Would you like a demonstration? I believe the 3rd Medical Defense Squadron is conducting routine inspections in this sector." "That won't be necessary," several voices called out simultaneously. Now Crystal interjected smoothly, his LEDs shifting to diplomatic cyan, about the new recognition protocols. "We've incorporated several human suggestions, including mandatory coffee-making facilities in all medical ships." Rodriguez's influence. "He can be very persuasive when he's juggling and discussing the benefits of properly caffeinated medical personnel." The meeting continued, with various species contributing their ideas for preventing future medical ship misunderstandings. Murphy noticed that most suggestions seemed to involve making absolutely certain no one could possibly mistake a medical vessel for anything else. The Zentarans had proposed covering medical ships in flashing neon signs. The Andorians suggested automated broadcasts of medical credentials in 47 languages, including interpretive dance. By the way, Crystal added as the meeting wound down, our military academies have added a new required course, human medical ships. Why you should run the other way, it's quite popular. Required viewing of the footage from our inspection tour. The part where your ships performed emergency dental work on an entire battle fleet is particularly effective. As the meeting concluded, Murphy's console lit up with a priority message from Earth Defense Command. She read it and grinned. Flo, she called out. Inform the crew we have new orders. Apparently, the Krixian Empire has expressed doubts about the efficiency of human medical practices. Shall I notify Admiral Thompson's medical defense fleet? Oh yes. And tell Rodriguez to prepare his special blend of coffee. I believe it's time for another routine inspection tour. Somewhere in the distance, classical music began playing, and Murphy could swear she heard the distinct sound of juggling balls being retrieved from storage. Just another Tuesday in human space.